The temperature over the next few days is going to be very, very hot. And it reminds me of the times when I used to bake quite regularly. In the summertime, I kind of really loved baking because you're in a kitchen, you got the oven on, and it would get so hot and just almost unbearable. But there were some things that I did to try and sort of mitigate that. So in this video, I'm just going to give you some tips on how to cope with baking in the hot weather. Number one, trying to bake at not the hottest time of day. So when in the summertime, what I would try and do is either bake really early, and which was fine for me because I'm an early riser, so I could sometimes start baking at 4 in the morning. Or if I wasn't able to do that, try and bake later in the evening where it tends to be, but not always, tends to be cooler. Just a caveat, I'm talking about baking in the UK. I realize there's places in the world where it's hot all year round. I'm not talking about those places. I'm talking about the UK where there's generally four seasons. So yeah, so try and bake really early in the morning or later in the evening where it's cooler because the oven's gonna be on, and you don't want the oven to be on like in the middle of the day at the hottest time. It's not the way to do it. So early in the morning or late in the evening. One thing I used to do when I was baking in the summer is that I used to have fans blowing all the time. I think nowadays more likely people would actually use portable air conditioning units as well as fans. So what I would say is if your kitchen does tend to still get quite warm, even if you do sort of bake early in the morning or late in the evening, or you can't for some reason bake at those times, have a fan, have a portable air conditioning unit just so that it keeps you cool and helps keep your baked cool as well. Most of the cakes that I baked were buttercream cakes, and we all know what buttercream is like in the hot weather. It's a nightmare. You get the buttercream in the piping bag and you're piping it, and it's just slowly melting. So, what I would do is I would get ice packs and I would put my buttercream that was already in the piping bags and I would lie them on ice packs in between me decorating the cake, and that helps keep it a little bit more stable. So, that's a good trick tip, I should say, if you're somebody who does a lot of buttercream finished cakes. One thing to consider is slight recipe changes. One thing I used to do in the summer is add maybe a little bit more icing sugar in my buttercream recipe. And also, I can't remember where I found this tip. Another tip is to add a bit of corn flour to your buttercream recipe as well. You might have to experiment with that. You don't want too much because you don't want the cake to taste a bit funny. But that kind of gave a more stable buttercream, in my experience anyway. So that's something that you may want to consider. So you add a little bit more buttercream, sorry, add a little bit more icing sugar to make the buttercream more stable, or a little bit of corn flour as well. And finally, this isn't really a sort of general tip for hot weather, but it's a general tip in general, if that makes sense. If you can, for your bakes, your finished decorated cakes, have a separate fridge. In the beginning, just used to use the main fridge that everybody in the house used. But as I was kind of getting a bit busy, I decided to get a separate fridge. Now, the fridge I got was a half fridge. It wasn't even a big fridge. And that was adequate for me. But I think having a separate fridge really helps because what can happen is if you put the cake that you've decorated in the fridge where all your main food is, sometimes the cake can kind of absorb those sort of odors that's in the fridge. So having a separate cake that's only used for like cakes and even like cake ingredients like butter, etc., is a really good idea. And another thing as well is that that fridge will tend to not be opened as much as the main fridge, so the temperature will stay more constant, which means that your cake should be sort of more kind of protected because it's not going to be subject to fluctuations in temperature. So definitely consider getting a fridge. It doesn't have to be a fancy commercial fridge. Just get another standard fridge. And like I said, I got a half fridge. But you can just get another fridge. And my half fridge is in the garage. But I mean, the fridge can be, the fridge you can literally put anywhere really, as long as there's a plug socket. So I would definitely recommend getting a separate fridge for your cakes. So those are some tips for baking in the hot weather. Let me know in the comments if you've got any other tips that you want to share with bakers. Until next time, cake lovers.